The morning mist clung to the Colorado mountains like a silk veil as I checked my reflection one last time. My blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the soft morning light was kind to my features. Being a model had taught me exactly which angles worked best. I'd spent years perfecting the art of being Iris Walker, and most days I could almost forget the journey that brought me here. "Ms. Walker, the balloon's ready." The young assistant's voice cracked slightly. I was used to that reaction. People never quite knew how to place me. At 32, I'd grown comfortable with the sideways glances and whispered conversations. The photography session had been my agent's idea. "Sunrise over the Rockies, darling. Very avant-garde." But as I approached the massive red and gold balloon, I noticed something was off. Instead of the usual fashion photographer I'd expected, a woman with dark brown hair was adjusting her camera equipment with precise, almost militant movements. "There's been a change of plans," the assistant explained nervously. "Meet Abigail Porter. She's filling in for Marco." Abigail barely looked up from her camera. "It's Abby," she said curtly, her blue eyes flickering over me with professional detachment that couldn't quite mask her discomfort. "Let's get this over with." The balloon pilot, a cheerful man named Chuck, helped us aboard. As we lifted off, the awkward tension between Abby and me was thick enough to cut with a knife. She kept her distance, hiding behind her camera like a shield. "The light's wrong," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "We need to go higher." I leaned against the basket's edge, letting the wind play with loose strands of my hair. "You know," I said, keeping my voice casual, "most photographers at least pretend to like their subjects." That got her attention. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something flicker there. Curiosity, perhaps? "I don't pretend," she replied, "ever." The sun chose that moment to break through the clouds, bathing everything in golden light. Abby's camera came up instinctively, and I heard the rapid-fire click of the shutter. For a split second, her professional mask slipped, and I caught a glimpse of genuine wonder. "Gosh," she breathed, lowering the camera. "That's beautiful." I smiled, recognizing the familiar awe that the mountains inspired. "It's like being in another world up here, isn't it?" She nodded, then caught herself and stiffened again. But something had shifted. As we floated above the awakening city, Abby's camera found me again and again. This time, though, her shots felt different, less mechanical, more curious. "Turn your face toward the light," she directed, her voice softer now. "Just be yourself." I almost laughed at the irony of those words. Being myself was exactly what had made people uncomfortable my entire life. But up here, suspended between heaven and earth, with the morning light painting everything in gold, I felt weightless, free. The rest of the session flowed naturally. Abby's initial resistance melted gradually, replaced by professional focus. By the time we landed, she was actually smiling, small, reluctant smiles, but smiles nonetheless. "These might not be completely terrible," she admitted, reviewing the shots on her camera's screen. "We should probably schedule a studio follow-up." It wasn't exactly a warm invitation, but I recognized it for what it was, a tiny crack in her carefully constructed walls. As I watched her pack up her equipment, I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time our paths crossed in Colorado Springs. A week after our balloon adventure, I found myself standing outside Abby's studio, a converted warehouse in the artsy district of Colorado Springs. The morning's peculiar energy still lingered between us, but now it was tinged with something else, a reluctant professional respect. "Vogue wants a spread," she announced without preamble as I entered. 12 pages. They specifically requested us both. Her voice carried a mix of irritation and resignation. The studio was immaculate, all clean lines and stark whites, perfectly reflecting its owner's controlled personality. "Lucky us," I said, watching her adjust the lighting setup. She wore black jeans and a crisp white shirt, her brown hair twisted into a messy bun. Professional, distant, yet somehow more approachable than during our first meeting. "Let's be clear," Abby said, testing her camera settings. "This is strictly business. I know your reputation in the industry." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You're good at what you do. I respect that. But I run a conservative studio." I had to bite back a smile. If she'd done her research, she'd know I was one of the most professional models in the business. "Of course," I replied smoothly. "Shall we begin?" The first hour was stiff, mechanical. Abby directed with precise, clipped instructions, maintaining her distance. But as the morning wore on, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the light played across the studio, or perhaps it was the music softly playing in the background, but her camera started finding different angles, capturing moments instead of poses. "Move to the window," she called out. "The natural light there." She trailed off, already seeing something through her lens that I couldn't. I followed her direction, and suddenly her whole demeanor changed. "Perfect," she breathed. "Just stay there." The clicking of her camera became more rapid, more enthusiastic. She moved around me like a dancer, finding angles I didn't know existed. "Your eyes," she murmured, almost to herself. "They catch the light differently every time." For a moment, I forgot who we were supposed to be. The conservative photographer and the transgender model. We were just artist and subject, creating something together. The spell broke when her assistant brought in lunch. Abby retreated behind her professional facade, but I caught her studying the images on her computer with unusual intensity. "We should try the outdoor location for sunset," she said finally, not looking up. The mountain backdrop could work well with the magazine's theme. The evening shoot was different. As the sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Abby's reserve cracked further. She laughed when I made a joke about the wind messing up her carefully planned shots, and actually helped adjust my hair when it kept blowing in my face. "You're different than I expected," she admitted as we packed up. The sunset had faded to dusk, and the first stars were appearing above the mountains. "Different good or different bad?" She paused, considering. "Just different." Her blue eyes met mine for a moment, then quickly looked away. "We have more shoots scheduled this week. Try not to be late." As I walked to my car, I caught her watching me in the reflection of the studio windows. There was confusion in her expression, and something else, something that made my heart beat a little faster. "Same time tomorrow?" I called over my shoulder. "Don't be late," she repeated, but this time there was a hint of a smile in her voice. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The walls weren't gone, but they were definitely showing cracks. And in those cracks, I caught glimpses of a very different Abigail Porter than the one I'd met in that hot air balloon. The call from Sarah came during a break between shots. My best friend since college was crying, her words tumbling out in a confused jumble about failed IVF attempts and dwindling options. I stepped into Abby's office for privacy, my heart aching for her and her wife Rachel. "We've tried everything, Iris," Sarah sobbed. "The doctors say our last hope is surrogacy, but the waiting lists are years long, and we can't afford the private agencies." I found myself speaking before I could think it through. "I'll do it. I'll be your surrogate." The silence on the other end was deafening. "But your modeling career and your hormone treatments." "I'll figure it out," I assured her, even as my mind raced with the implications. "What are best friends for?" I was so caught up in the conversation that I didn't hear the office door open. It wasn't until I turned around that I saw Abby standing there, frozen, a stack of prints in her hands. Her blue eyes were wide with surprise, and something else. Was that admiration? "I'll call you back," I told Sarah quickly, ending the call. The silence in the office was thick with unasked questions. Abby cleared her throat. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. She placed the prints on her desk with careful precision. "That's quite an offer you just made." I waited for the judgment, the disapproval, but it didn't come. Instead, she sat down behind her desk and looked at me with unexpected intensity. "Tell me about your friends." The request caught me off guard. For the next hour, as the sun set outside her office window, I found myself telling Abby about Sarah and Rachel's journey, about their love, their struggles, their dreams of becoming parents. To my surprise, she listened without comment, her expression thoughtful. "My sister," she said finally, "she and her husband tried for years before giving up. Sometimes I think," she trailed off, shaking her head, "what you're offering to do, it's incredible. But not very conservative." I couldn't help adding. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Maybe I need to reconsider what that word means." She stood up, walking to the window. "Life isn't always black and white, is it?" "No," I agreed softly. "It's usually somewhere in the beautiful middle." She turned to face me, and for the first time since we'd met, her professional mask was completely gone. "Would you like to get coffee? To talk about everything?" The small cafe across from her studio became our sanctuary. Over steaming mugs, Abby shared stories about her own journey, her strict upbringing, her rebellion through art, her struggle to balance faith with reality. I told her about my transition, about the family I'd lost and the one I'd found. I used to think I had everything figured out, she admitted as evening settled around us. But lately, her eyes met mine across the table. Lately, I'm not so sure about anything. Doubt can be a good thing, I said gently. It means you're growing. She reached across the table, hesitated, then briefly touched my hand. The contact was electric, sending shivers up my arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for making me think, for making me feel. The moment was broken by my phone buzzing. Sarah, calling back. Abby withdrew her hand, but something had changed between us. The walls weren't just cracked anymore, they were crumbling. As I left the cafe, Abby called after me. Iris, whatever you decide about the surrogacy, I'd like to document it, if you're comfortable with that. I turned back, studying her face in the soft evening light. You'd want to do that? I think. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I think it could be beautiful, like everything else about you. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. As I walked home through the cool Colorado evening, I couldn't stop smiling. Sometimes the most unexpected turns in life lead to the most beautiful destinations. The invitation to Abby's private gallery opening arrived on cream-colored cardstock, her elegant handwriting making my heart skip. Over the past few weeks, our professional relationship had evolved into something neither of us could quite define. Every photo session felt like a dance, each of us moving closer, then retreating, afraid to break the delicate balance we'd found. The gallery was housed in an old Victorian mansion, its windows glowing warmly against the darkening Colorado sky. I smoothed down my emerald green dress, chosen specifically because Abby had once mentioned how it brought out my eyes, and stepped inside. You came. Abby's voice was soft behind me. I turned to find her looking stunning in a black tailored suit, her brown hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. I wasn't sure you would. And miss seeing your private collection? Never. I glanced around at the photographs lining the walls. They were different from her commercial work, raw, emotional, beautiful in their honesty. These are incredible, Abby. She guided me through the gallery, explaining each series in low, intimate tones. Her usual professional distance had melted away, replaced by passionate enthusiasm. We were nearly alone in the space, most guests concentrated in the main hall. There's something else I want to show you, she said, leading me toward a door marked darkroom. Inside, the space was bathed in red light, making everything feel dreamlike and surreal. This is where the magic happens. The room was small, forcing us to stand close together as she showed me prints developing in chemical baths. The process was mesmerizing, images slowly appearing like ghosts on blank paper. Or maybe it was just her proximity that made everything feel magical. This one's my favorite, she whispered, pointing to a photo emerging in the developer. It was from our balloon ride, me, looking out over the mountains, sunrise turning my hair to gold. The way she'd captured the moment took my breath away. Is that really how you see me? I asked, my voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ventilation system. She turned to face me, our bodies inches apart in the confined space. I see you exactly as you are, Iris. Her blue eyes searched mine in the red light. Beautiful, brave, real. The air between us crackled with tension. I could feel her breath on my cheek, see the pulse jumping in her throat. For a moment I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she stepped back, breaking the spell. We should get back to the party, she said, but her voice was shaky. We emerged to find Abby's family had arrived. Her parents, her sister, and various conservative relatives who'd supported her career. The change in her was immediate. She stiffened, retreating behind her professional facade. Abigail, darling. Her mother's voice carried across the gallery. Who's your friend? I watched Abby struggle with the introduction, saw the conflict in her eyes. This is Iris Walker, she finally said. We're working on a project together. The way her mother's eyes narrowed told me she recognized my name. The gossip about the transgender model had obviously reached even their conservative circles. How? Interesting, she said, her tone suggesting anything but. Abby's hand found mine briefly, squeezed it, then let go. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a declaration. Iris is one of the most talented models I've worked with, she said firmly. And a dear friend. The evening became a delicate dance of social obligations and meaningful glances. Abby moved between her family's expectations and our growing connection with increasing discomfort. I could see the strain in her shoulders, the tension in her smile. As the night wound down, she found me again by the gallery entrance. "I'm sorry about my family," she said quietly. "They're traditional." "Don't apologize," I told her. "I understand complicated families better than most." She reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, her fingers lingering on my cheek. "Stay for a while, after everyone leaves? There's more I want to show you." The invitation hung between us, heavy with possibility. Outside, snow had begun to fall, turning Colorado Springs into a winter wonderland. Inside, in the warm light of Abby's gallery, everything felt possible. "Yes," I said simply. "I'll stay." Her smile, bright and genuine, was worth every moment of uncertainty that had led us here. Sometimes the best art, like the best relationships, develops slowly, revealing itself one layer at a time in the safety of a darkroom's red light. The fertility clinic was a maze of sterile corridors and forced optimism. Sarah and Rachel sat beside me, holding hands so tightly their knuckles were white, while Abby stood by the window, her camera forgotten at her side. She'd insisted on being here, claiming it was for the documentary, but I'd seen the concern in her eyes. "Your hormone levels are good," Dr. Martinez said, reviewing my charts. "But we'll need to adjust your regular treatments during the process. Are you sure about this, Ms. Walker?" I caught Abby's reflection in the window. She gave me a small nod, and somehow that tiny gesture filled me with certainty. "Yes, I'm sure." The next few weeks became a blur of appointments and injections. Abby was there for every single one, sometimes filming, sometimes just holding my hand. We never talked about the growing tension between us, about the way her touch lingered, or how my heart raced whenever she was near. "You're the bravest person I know," she told me one evening as we drove back from the clinic. The setting sun painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, and she'd pulled over to capture the moment with her camera. Not just for this, but for everything. I watched her work, mesmerized by the way she moved, how she saw beauty in everything. "Even braver than your war correspondent friend you told me about?" She lowered her camera, turning to face me. "Different kind of brave. He risks his life for stories. You risk your heart for love." The word hung between us like a tangible thing. We were standing close, the mountain breeze playing with her hair, and I could smell her subtle perfume, something woodsy and clean. "Abby," I started, but she was already moving, her camera coming up like a shield. "The light's perfect," she said quickly. "Let me get a few more shots." But something had shifted. As she photographed me against the sunset, her directions became softer, more intimate. "Turn your face toward the light," she whispered. Just like that first morning in the balloon, but now the words carried different weight. "Like this?" I asked, knowing I was pushing boundaries. She lowered her camera slowly, her blue eyes intense. "Just be yourself, remember?" The moment stretched between us like honey, sweet and slow. The mountain wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. Abby took a step forward, then another, until she was close enough that I could see the flecks of gray in her eyes. "I'm trying to be professional," she murmured. "I'm trying so hard. Maybe too hard," I suggested softly. The kiss, when it finally came, was gentle as a whisper. Her lips brushed mine hesitantly, questioning, then with growing confidence. The camera hung forgotten between us as her free hand found my waist, pulling me closer. When we broke apart, the sun had dipped below the mountains, painting everything in soft twilight. Abby pressed her forehead against mine, breathing unsteady. "I shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" "Because." She struggled with the words. "Because I'm supposed to be documenting your journey, not becoming part of it." I touched her cheek gently. "Maybe they're not mutually exclusive." She leaned into my touch, eyes closing briefly. "This is going to complicate everything." "Life's complicated anyway," I reminded her. "Might as well make it worth it." The drive back to the city was quiet, but Abby's hand found mine across the console, our fingers intertwining naturally. The lights of Colorado Springs sparkled below us like earthbound stars as we descended from the mountains. "Stay with me tonight," she said suddenly as we neared her studio. Not 4, just stay, please. I squeezed her hand gently. Yes. That night, curled together on her couch watching old movies, everything felt right. The fertility treatments, the documentary, the complications, they all faded into background noise compared to the simple rhythm of her heartbeat under my ear. What are we doing, Iris? She whispered into the darkness. I traced patterns on her palm, thinking of all the twists and turns that had led us here. Living, I replied simply. Just living. She pressed a kiss to my temple, and I felt her smile. Sometimes the best stories, like the best photographs, capture not just moments but possibilities. And in that moment, our possibilities felt endless. The first signs of autumn were painting the Colorado landscape when Abby's internal struggle reached its breaking point. I found her in her studio early one morning, surrounded by prints from our documentary sessions, her Bible open on the desk beside them. I went to church this morning, she said without looking up. First time in months. Tried to pray away whatever this is between us. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. And how did that work out? Terrible. She finally met my eyes, and the conflict there was painful to witness. All I could think about was you, your strength, your grace, your... She gestured helplessly at the photos spread around her. Everything. I moved closer, careful to maintain distance. Abby, if you need to step back from the documentary. That's just it. She stood abruptly, pacing the studio. I don't want to step back. I don't want to stop feeling this way, and that terrifies me. The morning light streamed through the windows, catching the tears in her eyes. It reminded me of that first sunrise in the balloon, when everything was simpler and infinitely more complicated. My whole life, she continued, I've had these beliefs, these certainties. Then you come along, and suddenly, she picked up one of the prints, me at the clinic, laughing at something off camera. Suddenly, everything I thought I knew seems too small. Faith and love aren't mutually exclusive, I said softly. She whirled to face me. Aren't they? My parents, my church, everyone I've ever known. Aren't you? I interrupted gently. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Abby moved to the window, her silhouette outlined in golden light. I'm falling in love with you, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. And I don't know how to handle that. I crossed the room slowly, giving her time to retreat if she needed to. She didn't. When I reached her, she turned to face me, her blue eyes swimming with tears and determination. Then don't handle it, I suggested. Just feel it. The kiss that followed was different from our first, desperate, hungry, full of weeks of suppressed emotion. Her hands tangled in my hair as she backed me against the studio wall, photographs crunching under our feet. Wait, she pulled back suddenly, breathing hard. The hormone treatments, the surrogacy, I shouldn't. I silenced her with another kiss. The treatments are fine, everything's fine, just be here with me. What followed was a blur of sensation and emotion, a passionate reconciliation between faith and feeling. Later, as we lay tangled together on the studio's small sofa, Abby traced patterns on my skin with trembling fingers. I've never, she started. I know, I soothed, kissing her temple. The documentary, she said suddenly, sitting up. Gosh, we're supposed to be professional. I couldn't help but laugh. I think we're way past that, don't you? She smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes. Maybe this is part of the story too, how love changes everything. The rest of the day passed in a haze of soft touches and stolen kisses, punctuated by actual work on the documentary. Abby's camera found new angles, capturing moments between moments, the way our hands brushed, the shared glances, the quiet intimacy of trust. That evening, as we reviewed the day's footage, Dr. Martinez called. Congratulations, she said. The implantation was successful. You're pregnant. Abby's hand found mine as the news sank in. This journey we'd started separately was now irrevocably intertwined. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles, a gesture of support and something deeper. Are you okay? She asked after I hung up. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd started as my reluctant photographer was now something else entirely, something wonderful and scary and real. Better than okay, I replied, pulling her close. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She kissed me softly, reverently. So am I, she whispered against my lips. So am I. Outside, the Colorado sunset painted the sky in shades of promise, while inside, we built our own kind of faith, one touch at a time. The intervention was staged on a Sunday afternoon after church. Abby had invited me to brunch at her parents' Victorian home in the historic district, but when we arrived, the living room was filled with concerned faces, her parents, her sister, their pastor, and several church elders. "Abigail," her mother's voice was sharp with disappointment. "This has gone far enough." Abby's hand tightened around mine. I could feel her trembling, but her voice was steady. "What exactly is this?" "We've seen the way you look at her," her father said, stumbling over the pronoun. "It's not natural, not right." "We're worried about your soul, dear," added an elderly woman I recognized as her mother's best friend. "And your reputation. The community talks." I started to pull away to give Abby space, but she held firm. "My reputation?" She laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You mean my award-winning photography? My successful business? Or just the fact that I'm finally happy?" "This isn't happiness," the pastor interjected smoothly. "It's confusion. This person has led you astray." I felt Abby's spine stiffen. "This person," she said carefully, "is named Iris. She's carrying a child for a loving couple. She's brave and kind and real, and I love her." The room fell silent. It was the first time she'd said those words in front of anyone else. Her mother made a small, wounded sound. "Love?" Her sister finally spoke up. "Abby, you don't even know who she really is." "I know exactly who she is." Abby's voice grew stronger. "Better than any of you. And I know who I am too, finally." She turned to face the room, and I saw the photographer in her, the artist who captured truth in silver and light. "I've spent my whole life trying to fit into the frame you created for me. The perfect daughter, the conservative artist, the good Christian woman. But I was never really in focus, was I?" "This isn't you speaking," her father insisted. This is exactly me," Abby interrupted. "The real me. The one who believes love is love, who sees beauty in truth, who understands that gosh works in mysterious ways, including bringing Iris into my life." Her mother stood, hands shaking. "If you continue down this path, you'll lose everything. Your family, your church, your clients. If those things depend on me denying my heart," Abby said quietly, "then maybe they're not worth keeping." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched tears roll down Abby's cheeks, but her voice never wavered as she continued. "I'm not asking for your approval. I'm just asking you to try to understand, to see me, really see me, like I've learned to see others." She turned to me then, her blue eyes full of love and determination. "Let's go home." The drive back to her studio was quiet, the mountain sunset painting the sky in shades of defiance. When we finally parked, Abby sat still, hands gripping the steering wheel. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I never meant to cost you your family." She turned to me, and to my surprise, she was smiling through her tears. "You didn't cost me anything. You gave me everything. The courage to be myself, to love openly, to stand up for what I believe in." That night, we lay tangled together in her bed, my barely showing pregnancy bump between us. Abby's hand rested protectively over it as she whispered stories about growing up in Colorado Springs, about hiding her truth, about finding freedom through her lens. "Maybe," she mused, "this is what my photography was always leading to, learning to see beyond the surface, to capture the real story." I touched her face gently. "And what's our real story?" She kissed me softly, tenderly. "It's still developing." Outside, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, while inside, we created our own constellation of truth and love and defiance. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into, but what you choose to create, one brave moment at a time. "No regrets?" I asked as sleep began to claim us. "Not a single one," she murmured, pulling me closer. "You're my best photograph, the one that changed everything." And in that moment, surrounded by love and acceptance, we were both finally completely in focus. The email from Vogue arrived on a crisp October morning. Abby's documentary series about our journey, the surrogacy, the love story, the transformation, had caught their attention. They wanted to feature it in their upcoming issue, focusing on modern relationships and family. "They want us to do an interview," Abby said, her voice tight with emotion as she read the email aloud in her studio. "Both of us, about everything." I watched her face carefully, noting the mix of excitement and apprehension. Are you ready for that kind of exposure? After everything with your family? She looked around her studio, at the walls now covered with intimate moments from our journey, me at various stages of pregnancy, our quiet moments together, the joy on Sarah and Rachel's faces during ultrasound appointments. I think, she said slowly, it's time to stop hiding. The photo exhibition opened at her gallery 2 weeks later. The space was packed with magazine editors, art critics, and local media. Abby had transformed the Victorian mansion into a chronological journey, starting with that first sunrise balloon ride and ending with recent shots of my growing baby bump. These are extraordinary, a Vogue editor gushed, studying a particularly intimate black and white photo of me reading pregnancy books in Abby's apartment. The way you've captured the vulnerability, the strength. Abby squeezed my hand. That's all, Iris. I just document what's already there. The murmur of conversation suddenly hushed. Abby's parents had arrived, standing awkwardly in the entrance. Her mother's eyes were wide as she took in the photographs. The story they told of her daughter's transformation from reluctant photographer to passionate storyteller. Abby tensed beside me, but then something unexpected happened. Her mother moved slowly through the gallery, stopping at each photograph, really looking. When she reached us, her eyes were wet. "These are beautiful, Abigail," she said softly. I think I understand a little better now. It wasn't acceptance, not quite, but it was a start. Abby's voice shook as she replied, "Thank you, Mom." The evening became a blur of interviews and congratulations. Critics praised the raw honesty of the series, the way it challenged preconceptions about love, gender, and family. But the real moment came during Abby's speech. "When I started this project," she told the packed gallery, "I thought I was documenting someone else's journey. Instead, I found my own truth through my lens." She turned to me, her blue eyes bright with emotion. "I found love in unexpected places, courage in quiet moments, and family in new definitions." A reporter raised his hand. "Miss Porter, won't this series alienate your more conservative clients?" Abby straightened, confidence radiating from her. "My work has always been about truth. If showing love in all its forms cost me clients, then they weren't the right clients to begin with." The applause was thunderous. Later, as the crowd thinned, we found ourselves in her dark room, surrounded by the familiar red glow that had witnessed our first almost kiss. "Remember that night?" Abby asked, tracing my cheek with her fingertips. "How could I forget? You were so scared then." She smiled, pulling me closer. "Not scared anymore, just grateful." Her hand rested on my growing belly. "For everything." The door opened and Sarah and Rachel peeked in. "Sorry to interrupt," Sarah grinned, "but everyone's asking for more champagne." "Well, sparkling cider for you, Iris." As we rejoined the party, I caught sight of our reflection in one of the gallery windows, Abby's arm around my waist, my pregnancy obvious now in my fitted dress, both of us glowing with happiness. It was another moment worthy of capturing, another piece of our ongoing story. "You know," Abby whispered in my ear as we made our rounds, "I always thought art was about creating beauty. But sometimes it's just about recognizing the beauty that's already there." The evening ended with Abby's mother hugging her awkwardly but sincerely, whispering something that made Abby cry. Her father wasn't ready yet, but as Abby had said earlier, some photographs take longer to develop than others. Back home, surrounded by the quiet of our shared space, Abby set up her camera one last time. "For us," she explained, capturing our reflection in the window, the city lights twinkling behind us. "Just for us." The camera clicked, preserving another moment in our journey. Not just as subject and photographer, but as partners, as family. As proof that love doesn't always follow the expected path, but always finds its way home. The first contraction hit during a routine photo session at the studio. I was 7 months along, posing for Abby's ongoing documentation of the pregnancy, when the sharp pain doubled me over. Her camera clattered to the floor as she rushed to my side. "Something's wrong," I gasped, clutching my belly. "It's too early." The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and Abby's steady stream of reassurances. Sarah and Rachel met us there, their faces pale with worry. The emergency room was chaos. Nurses rushing, monitors beeping, doctors speaking in urgent tones. "Preeclampsia," Dr. Martinez explained grimly. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. We need to admit you immediately." Abby never left my side. her camera forgotten for once as she held my hand through the endless tests and monitoring. She somehow managed to look both terrified and completely in control, fielding calls from our families while keeping me calm. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," the nurse assured us, adjusting the monitors. "But we need to keep you here for observation." The hospital room became our new reality. Abby transformed the sterile space with photographs from our journey, the balloon ride, the gallery opening, quiet moments at home. She worked remotely from a chair beside my bed, her laptop balanced precariously on the windowsill. "You don't have to stay," I told her one evening, watching her struggle to edit photos on her tiny screen. She looked up, those blue eyes fierce with determination. "Try and make me leave." Sarah and Rachel visited daily, their worry mixed with guilt. "We never should have asked this of you," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Hey," I caught her hand. "This baby is a gift. No regrets." The days blurred together in a haze of medication and monitoring. Abby documented everything, not with her professional camera but with her phone, capturing the raw, unfiltered moments of our vigil. The way she looked at me through her lens had changed. There was something deeper now, something that went beyond artist and subject. One night, during a particularly rough bout of contractions, she crawled into the narrow hospital bed beside me, holding me through the pain. "I've got you," she whispered. "We've got this." Dr. Martinez became increasingly concerned as my blood pressure continued to rise. "We may need to consider an emergency C-section," she warned. "The baby's safety has to come first." The decision was made for us when, in the early hours of a snowy morning, my water broke. The delivery room was a flurry of activity, medical terms being thrown around like confetti. Abby stood at my head, her usually steady photographer's hands trembling as she stroked my hair. "Stay with me," I pleaded, as another contraction ripped through me. "Always," she promised, her voice thick with emotion. "Always." Sarah and Rachel waited anxiously outside while the doctors worked. The baby's heartbeat became erratic, and suddenly there were more people in the room, more urgent voices. "We need to do the C-section now," Dr. Martinez announced. "There's no time to wait." Abby's face appeared above me, her eyes locked on mine. "Focus on me," she said firmly. "Just like in the studio, remember? Find your light." I clung to her voice, to her presence, as the medical team moved around us. The anesthesia made everything foggy, but Abby remained crystal clear, her love the only thing keeping me anchored. The sound of a baby's first cry cut through everything else. "It's a girl," someone announced. "She's small, but she's fighting." They whisked her away to the NICU before I could see her properly, but Abby managed to snap one quick photo with her phone. A tiny, perfect face, scrunched up against the bright lights of the delivery room. "She's beautiful," Abby whispered, showing me the image. "Just like her surrogate mother." The complications weren't over. My blood pressure remained dangerously high, requiring several more days of intensive care. But Abby orchestrated everything, coordinating with Sarah and Rachel's visits to the NICU, keeping our families updated, and never, ever leaving my side. "You know," she said one quiet evening, as we watched the snow fall outside my hospital window, "I thought I knew what love was when I started photographing you. But this." She gestured to encompass everything. The hospital room, the baby down the hall, our intertwined hands. "This is something else entirely." I squeezed her hand weakly. "Something better?" She brought our joined hands to her lips. "Something perfect." Through the window, the lights of Colorado Springs twinkled like stars, while down the hall, a tiny baby girl fought for every breath, surrounded by love from all sides. Sometimes the most beautiful photographs are the ones taken in the darkest moments, when love shines brightest against the shadows. The NICU became our second home during those first crucial weeks. I spent hours watching the tiny being I'd carried, now thriving under the careful attention of nurses. Abby documented everything. The first time Sarah and Rachel held their daughter, the gradual removal of tubes and monitors, each small victory in this tiniest of battles. But it was during the quiet moments, when everyone else had gone home, that the weight of it all would hit me. Abby found me crying one night, my hand pressed against the incubator glass. "Talk to me," she said softly, setting down her ever-present camera. "I didn't expect this," I whispered, "to feel so connected. She's not mine, but every time she wraps her tiny fingers around mine, I feel like your heart is being pulled in two directions?" I nodded, unable to speak. Abby wrapped her arms around me from behind, both of us watching the steady rise and fall of the baby's chest. "You know what I see through my lens?" she murmured. "I see love in its purest form, the kind that gives without expecting anything in return, the kind that's brave enough to let go." The baby, named Luna by Sarah and Rachel, grew stronger each day. I pumped breast milk for her, watching as she gradually gained weight and color. The doctors were amazed by her progress, calling her their little fighter. "She gets that from you," Abby would say, capturing another milestone with her camera. But I could see the concern in her eyes whenever she looked at me, noticing how I lingered after feeding times, how hard it was to leave each night. One evening, after a particularly long day at the NICU, Abby drove us up into the mountains instead of heading home. The city lights spread out below us like a blanket of stars. "Remember our first sunset up here?" she asked, taking my hand. "When you finally kissed me." I smiled at the memory. "When I finally stopped being afraid." She turned to face me. "I see you struggling, Iris, trying to be strong for everyone else. But you don't have to be strong for me." The dam broke. All the complicated emotions I'd been holding back came flooding out. The joy of seeing Luna thrive, the pain of knowing she wasn't mine to keep, the guilt over feeling this way when Sarah and Rachel were such wonderful mothers. Abby held me through it all, her photographer's hands steady and sure. "You're allowed to love her," she whispered. "You're allowed to grieve. Both can be true at the same time." As my sobs quieted, she reached into her camera bag and pulled out a small album. "I've been working on this," she said, placing it in my hands. Inside were photographs of our entire journey, from the first balloon ride to the most recent NICU visits. But these weren't her usual artistic shots. These were intimate, personal moments she'd captured when no one was looking. Me reading to Luna through the incubator glass. Sarah and Rachel watching me feed her with grateful tears in their eyes. Abby's reflection in the hospital window as she watched over both of us. "This is your story too," Abby said softly. "Your love for Luna doesn't diminish their role as her mothers. It adds to it. She'll grow up knowing she was carried by someone who loved her enough to give her the ultimate gift." I traced a photo of Luna's tiny hand wrapped around my finger. "How do you always know exactly what I need?" "Because I see you," she said simply, "not just through my lens but with my heart." That night, we stayed in the mountains until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing. Abby shared her dreams of documenting more surrogacy journeys, of telling stories that needed to be told. I talked about my fears and hopes, about the unexpected ways love can reshape a life. As we drove back down the mountain, Abby's hand found mine. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "some of the most beautiful photographs I've ever taken are of moments like these, when someone finds their strength by admitting their vulnerability." I looked at her profile in the dashboard lights, this woman who'd gone from reluctant photographer to the love of my life. "Thank you," I said softly, "for seeing me, all of me." She squeezed my hand. "Always." The city welcomed us back with open arms, its lights a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way home. Sometimes letting go isn't about ending love, but about transforming it into something even more beautiful. Luna went home on a bright spring morning, exactly 6 months after that first balloon ride that started everything. Sarah and Rachel's house was ready, the nursery painted in soft yellows and greens. Abby photographed the moment they carried her through their front door, capturing the beginning of their new chapter. I stood back, watching through tears as they settled into their role as parents. Abby's hand found mine, her touch grounding me as always. "Ready to go?" she asked softly. But before we could leave, Sarah called us back. "Wait," she said, holding Luna close. "We have something to ask you both." Rachel stepped forward, holding an envelope. "We want you to be Luna's godmothers, both of you." The word hung in the air like a prayer. Abby's camera captured my expression as the request sank in a mix of joy, relief, and pure love that would later become one of her most celebrated photographs. "We want her to know her story," Sarah explained. "All of it. How love brought her into this world in so many different ways." That evening, as we drove through the familiar streets of Colorado Springs, Abby took an unexpected turn toward the mountains. "Where are we going?" She just smiled, that mysterious photographer's smile that I'd grown to love. The road wound higher until we reached a familiar clearing, the same spot where we'd shared our first kiss. But this time, there was a hot air balloon waiting, its red and gold panels glowing in the setting sun. "I thought we should end where we began," Abby said, helping me into the basket. "Or maybe begin again." As we rose above the city, the world fell away. The pilot, the same cheerful Chuck from our first flight, gave us a knowing wink and busied himself with the burners, leaving us our privacy. "I've been thinking," Abby said, pulling something from her camera bag, "about moments worth capturing." She handed me a small photo album, similar to the one she'd given me during those difficult NICU days. But this one was different. The first page showed that initial sunrise shot of me from our first flight. The following pages documented our journey, not just the big moments, but the quiet ones too. Us cooking dinner in her apartment, me sleeping on her studio couch, her parents at the gallery beginning to understand. The final page was blank, except for a small note. "Ready for the next chapter?" When I looked up, Abby was holding a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. "I'm not asking because of Luna or the documentary or anything else," she said softly. "I'm asking because you taught me to see beauty in unexpected places, to be brave enough to capture love in all its forms." The city sprawled below us, painted in sunset colors. Somewhere down there, Luna was being rocked to sleep by her mother's. Abby's gallery lights were glowing, welcoming evening visitors. Life was continuing, evolving, creating new stories to tell. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes." The ring slipped onto my finger just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting everything in gold. Abby's camera sat forgotten in its bag. Some moments, we decided, were just for us. Chuck popped a bottle of champagne, his cheerful voice carrying over the burner's roar. "To new beginnings." As we floated above the city we'd made our home, I thought about all the different ways love shows itself. Through a camera lens, in a baby's grip, in the courage to let go and the strength to hold on. "What happens next?" I asked, nestled in Abby's arms. She smiled, watching the stars emerge above us. "We keep capturing moments, keep telling stories, keep loving in all the ways we know how." The balloon drifted on the evening breeze, carrying us toward whatever waited on the horizon. Below us, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, each one a story waiting to be told. Some photographs take time to develop, showing their true beauty only when you're patient enough to wait. Some love stories do the same. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to be both the artist and the masterpiece, creating something beautiful together, one frame at a time. The sun had set completely now, but we weren't in any hurry to land. After all, the best stories don't really end, they just find new ways to begin.